So I talked a little bit there in my opening about the People's Panel, but we're going to hear more about it from our wonderful, panel.
Thank you.
So let's just find out who they are first. So, Sharif, can you introduce yourself?
Of course.
Where are you from?
So my name is Sharif. I'm from Leeds, a little town called Morley in Leeds. I've joined this group. I was a bit sceptical about it, to be honest with you. I saw an advertisement on social media for people wanting volunteers to learn about AI. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know nothing about AI. I'm not going to lie, it was new to me, a new language. I've had an opportunity to come down for 4 days and listen to people, and my views have changed from negative to being scared to actually, it's a good thing. So I'm turned, me.
Wow.
I've turned.
Well, we're going to hear more about why that happened and how that happened. But
Definitely.
really, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting us, thank you.
And Janet.
Hi, I'm from Cornwall, from a small village. Thank you for inviting us.
You're
by
very
the way.
welcome, yeah.
I thought, I'm embarrassed to say really, I thought I knew quite a bit about AI, but having the 4 days with the Fringe, I realised I didn't actually understand, and I think that's one of the key things I'd like to go back into, to take into communities, because there must be thousands of people like myself who think, yep, I know about it, robots, and then actually when you get into the depth of it, I didn't know anything at all.
Yeah, it's getting under it, right? And figuring it out more.
Yeah, and like Sharif, I actually feel very positive about it now. Obviously, there's the massive negativity and issues, but actually education, if we talk, if we can get the message out there, I think there's a lot more hope than fears.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, we'll maybe unpack that a little bit more. But before we do that, Tim Davies.
Yes.
From Connected by Data. Brilliant to have you with us. Yep. Perhaps talk me through a little bit about the aims and objectives of the People's Panel and why you came to do it, because a lot of people are like, public engagement's really hard to do. Yep. So why did you want to do this?
So I guess this all started with the announcement of the AI Safety Summit that we kind of heard trailed before the summer, but then only really found the details of come September, and we started looking at how that was coming together of a new space for the governance of emerging technology, where in the past there's been hard-won fights for multi-stakeholder governance, for citizens, civil society to be in the room. And we saw an event shaping up that didn't have much of that didn't have much public voice in the room where decisions were being discussed and possibly made. So we said, what's the way to challenge that as an organisation founded to give communities a say in decisions about data and AI? What can we do? And so we looked around and we saw the model of citizens' juries and a particular model from Portland, Oregon, of the Citizen Review, which says citizens, not as decision makers, but as reviewers, can look at some places where recommendations are being made, can deeply discuss those, can get expert input, and then can communicate to fellow citizens what they've learned and make recommendations to different audiences for actions. So we said, let's pull that together. Let's do a deliberative exercise, bringing together a representative group from across England to go down. And as the Fringe came together, it became the perfect vehicle to go and use the AI Fringe as our space to learn, engage, discuss, and put forward some recommendations.
So as I said, people think public engagement's hard to do, and obviously you did it you pulled this together quite quickly. So what's your experience, and what would you say to people that say that can this be done?
Yeah, so I think there is that challenge. There's always this narrative that technology is moving so fast, people can't keep up, can't understand it, therefore we leave decisions to experts or to the academics. 4 days, people can go from knowing very little to feeling very well informed. In 6 weeks, we can go from a concept note saying, let's do this, to being there and running that. I think what we showed with the panel and we're seeking to show is this can be done at the pace of technology, at a pace where we get meaningful views, informed views, but views informed both by understanding some of the technology, but understanding the lived experience into decision-making processes around tech.
Well done, Tim, in pulling it together, and it's really an impressive piece of work. I want to hear a little bit more from Janet and Sharif now. Maybe, Sharif, if I can start with you. Tell us a little bit more about your experience in the panel, like of the sessions and the conversations you had. What did you find interesting or memorable, or what's what really stuck with you?
In all honesty, for me, what was most memorable and still goes in my head now, I'll be honest, I'm not going to lie, was the Hopes and Fears Lab. It was actually speaking to people who use AI, who work on AI. So it wasn't just hearing the theory and reading about it. It was actually, and also we went to do something called ChatGPT. I've never heard of it before. And then I learned I can type something in, say, send me a CV, or amazing. I've got the app down my phone. Like I said, I'm an advocate now for AI. I really, really have. I've changed my mind completely. But Hopes and Fears Lab, I spoke to people who are on the ground level, and they listen. They not only tell me information, they listen. So I come up with an idea about mental health, and they went, that's really, really good. And it's about collaborating, speaking to people. It's the more you speak, the more you learn. And for me, that Hopes and Fears Lab was the number one thing that I took away from that, honestly. I think, personally, my personal view is that Hopes and Fears Labs could be integrated into society. In maybe universities, in maybe supermarkets, where people go, and if they've got a question, I'll just nip over there and speak, oh, I didn't know that. And just, because we fear things if we don't know about them. So if we educate people, let them ask questions in a confident environment, I think that's an ideal opportunity. I really, really do.
Janet, you're nodding away, but what about you?
Absolutely, Hopes and Fears. That was something that I felt was really special. And that one-to-one conversation with experts really did lower the fears, but also showed us what amazing work is out there with AI. One of the other things that really caught me was the panel, the public voice and AI. I heard things that I hadn't heard before. I heard opinions and thoughts and ideas, and I just kept on thinking, why haven't I heard of this before? Why not? This seems really something that we should be looking at and going forward as a society. You know, it's things like global assemblies, citizens' assemblies. Sorry, I have to keep looking down.
No, you're fine.
Oh, sorry, I'll dry up otherwise. Putting the public into institutions, perhaps, you know, a panel of public people in the AI Safety Institute. And basically putting the public first and letting us have a voice. So all of the speakers on public voice and AI, I would really love to listen to them again and talk to them. One of the others I do have to mention, sorry, turn the page as well, was elections, misinformation and democracy. And those speakers as well really seemed to touch me.
Is that because you hadn't thought about that before? It wasn't an issue that had occurred to you?
Yes, and also, for instance, there was a lady spoke about personal online abuse. And I just kept sitting there thinking, why are you still sitting? You know, how brave are you to still be going forward and trying to talk about online abuse? Again, it opened up my eyes to, obviously we all hear about online abuse, but when you listen to people talk about it, and then they're still brave enough to face it. And I just think it's very important that we look to somehow stop this. I'm sure there's people in the room can talk to me about how it can be done, but I think it's time to stop what's happening, and we need to look forward to, you know, something like that.
But Sharif, I was interested, were the things that you kind of knew going in, or were there things that, you know, what did you learn that you didn't know before, I suppose?
Yeah, so for me, I thought AI was Terminators. I'm not going to lie, that's how I see it. We're robots, we're going to be taking over the world, we're going to be living in this environment like in Terminator the movie.
Because that's the image you kind of see.
Honestly, that's the image I got. And when I got to London, and I had a meeting straight away, and they were telling us AI's been around for 30, 40 years. I said, what? No.
Maybe even longer.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, older than me? No, you know, no, I'm joking. But you know, it's quite surprising that I learned that AI is around us everywhere, and it has been for many, many years. So it's like you don't even realise it's here. It's here. It's here to stay, and it's going to get better and better and better. That's how I see it personally.
Yeah. Tim, was that the reflection from most of the panel?
Yeah, I think one of the really powerful things, and we took the panel through a range of activities from that first session where we thought about the AI kind of in people's pockets around them every day, through to looking at some of the frontier AI as well, of when people recognise we have experience already. We already have significant opinions about the algorithms in our social media, about the smart speakers we're using, about the job application
You just may not
processes.
think it's an opinion on AI.
We don't realise. Once we realise that and think we've already accommodated this in our lives, we've already got bits we're uncomfortable with, that provides a great foundation for then saying what's happening at the frontier. We can have opinions, we can think about that, and we can do the thought experiment to go through how is that going to impact us.
And I think unpacking those issues.
Exactly, it's going through that, it's giving the space to do that, giving the chance to have balanced views from different perspectives and trust people with that knowledge to then go, what do you make of that? How does that play out when you bring in your own experience of being in communities right across the country?
Yeah, amazing. So I know you ended up at the end of your 4 days, 4 days must have been amazing, with some recommendations. But just before we get to the recommendations, I understand you also talked about values and the values that you need to think about.
Yeah.
The tendency, we were talking about the kind of going straight to technology instead of talking about the values and the kind of good that AI should or could bring. So Janet, do you want to kick us off? Tell us a little bit more about the conversation that led you there and why values was so important.
I think it's because of obviously what's going on. So one example for me, and obviously these were things discussed at the panel, was, for instance, addiction. Addiction amongst children. Addiction that is like gambling addiction. And I don't know why I'm smiling, because I just cannot get over the fact that as a society, where's the safeguarding gone? How have we allowed this to happen? So there are children now under counselling. And I just find that really horrendous. So that's an example. Had 30 years ago, we had some core values and principles underpinning AI, I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened, but there might have been more conversations around what could happen and how can we safeguard children and vulnerable adults. So with the conversations with the People's Panel, everybody sort of came together and we realised if you started with values and principles, that how you want society to be, who in the room wants a society and is happy with the fact that children are becoming addicted. So if you start from the basis of the values and principles, and then technology, academics, scientists can all build to the values and the principles. Hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Sheree?
And for me, there was no limit. You know, we was put in a position in 4 days of think about, in an ideal world, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time, your kids and your grandchildren, what would you like them to see a world as it is then? So we were given no limits, with no constraints in these 4 days. It was our own opinion. And it was like, yeah, we're here now, but it doesn't matter how we get there. We can get there, but where do we see ourselves in 40? What do we want to look like in 40 years' time? What transport do we want? What education? Do we need education? Do we need employment? We don't know. These questions, in an ideal world, I tell you what, no, none of us will work. We'll all have our own houses, we'll all grow our own food, we'll share as food. It would conversations that were completely out there, but possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely possible in years to come, honestly, with AI.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And I think it was shifting that conversation from we could, but should we, which is, I guess, where a lot of kind of technology conversations
And we
start.
have that conversation in this room as well,
To what should we be doing? So what are the priorities that people are setting? And the challenges that are being set that say that there is both a social opportunity and even commercial opportunities to do lots of things with technology in ways that aren't being met because we're not necessarily listening to the communities across the country with those concerns.
And I'm getting a sense of the way, particularly Sharif and Janet, the way you speak about that, you're excited about that possible future, right?
We're exhausted with it, I think.
We're enthusiastic. There's been 11 of us on this journey, and many of us put our hand up to come down here to talk because we're all really enthusiastic, we're motivated. And like Janet, I talk my hands because I want to get going. You know what I mean? I was scared about this. At the beginning of AI it's robots, I'm scared, I don't want it. And these 4 days have taught me completely, listening to the Fringe people, thanks to Tim, this team, that it's not something to be scared about. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope about it. So I'm on this journey now, and I'm going to continue with it.
And I feel, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just feel passionate about it, and I know other members of the panel do. Now we've been educated, now we understand more, we don't want to stop. And there is so much more to be done. There's so much more conversations that we need to have,
Yes.
that the 11 of us know that we could contribute to, you know, the future and the way forward. So, yeah, sorry, I keep touching the mic.
you're fine.
Just so passionate about what's happening.
Well, that's why we're thrilled that you've joined us today, and I know that they're going to both be around all day, so you can, you know, talk more with Janet Sharif. But and let's keep this conversation going. Absolutely, we need to, right? So we talked about values. Now, you know, let's talk a little bit about the actual recommendations, because this was a 4-day panel. It was a 4-day experiment. And then the panel came up with recommendations. So, and Tim, I think you've got a slide for us to share, but tell us a bit about, you know, the recommendations.
So I guess, I'll let the panel talk to some of the particular recommendations, but what we did was go through that deliberative process of saying, let's take all that we've heard, let's think about where are the priorities for change or the messages to academics, to civil society, to government on what should be done. And the recommendations that I will go to the slide that's got them all on, kind of look both at these big questions of governance, like how should we be setting a framework for governing AI that really puts people at the centre, which I think is quite a different starting point from a lot of the fora spaces we've got emerging right now. There was a strong sense from the panel that needs that global governance, a strong sense that it needs to have teeth, which I think is aligned with many recommendations from others, but not necessarily the way policy has been going. And then I think some recommendations around the safe transition in the world of work to working alongside AI. Actually, we had a meeting on Monday where we dug into that deeper, where safety is not just about something for the worker whose job is being changed. It's also about the people who you're working with. So when Care Work introduces automation, thinking about how does that impact the care worker, how does it impact their clients, really thinking in the round about the sorts of transitions we're having with people's voice present in that, and a real piece also on transparency, but not transparency just for the sake of it. It was quite a nuanced recommendation the group came up with of saying, we're actually thinking about things like the black box flight recorder. We don't want to know everything that's going on every moment, but we want to know that someone is ready to audit, ready to check out, that the power is there to do that audit, and that there are competent actors ready to do that, and we can ask questions when we need to, rather than be overwhelmed by sort of transparency theatre. So I think some really nuanced recommendations came out, but I can let others pick that up more.
And I'd just like to highlight, we are trusted as citizens to be part of a jury. That jury, we have to listen to expert opinions, we have to then deliberate, and then we have to deliver a verdict that could send somebody to prison for the rest of their life. So that is a massive thing. So in our heads is if we can be trusted to have that kind of power, for want of a better word, why are citizens not more involved and be trusted to actually listen to the experts? I would never fully understand with the Hopes and Fears Lab. I spoke to some amazing scientists, and a lot of the technology, you know, is over my head. But we're not expected to know that. We expect the role is to listen and then to ask the questions about what value does that bring to society. And if we can be trusted to have somebody's life in our hands on a jury panel, why can't we take that a step further?
Very true.
Sharif, where do you or how do you see the recommendations therefore having like the biggest impact, or where do you think they could have the biggest impact?
I think for me is about collaboration. I think, to be honest with you, AI is not something that's going to be just for big tech companies. It's going to affect everybody, from me to my granddad to my grandchildren when I have them. You know, it's going to affect everybody, all walks of life. So it's about collaboration. They need to speak to us. We need to speak to them and tell them what we want. It's all right them introducing something. Oh, we've got a great idea, but it only helps 1% of the society. You know, if you listen to us and we think this, oh, I didn't realise that. So it's about having them conversations with the big tech companies and them listening and us listening to them. There might be constraints, we don't know. But if we tell them what we want and they say, I can deliver that, that's easy. Or I can't deliver it, but I can do this.
I suppose that goes to my final question of where does the People's Panel go next? You know, what would you all like to see happen next? Should public engagement continue? Should it be the People's Panel? Tim, you know, perhaps we'll start with you, and then Janet Sharif, would love to know your answers. Like, what do you see happening next with not the people's panel, but also just generally public engagement?
Yeah, so I think what we sought to demonstrate with this is it's very achievable to do this kind of deliberative public engagement at speed and at scale potentially, and I think one of the things should be a real encouragement to take that deliberative model, take that participatory model and embed that in all sorts of places where decisions are being made about data and AI, whether that's in corporate settings, in public policy settings. So I think a real spreading of that, but also with the People's Panel group themselves, where we're looking to 2024 about how to support an ongoing kind of expansion of that work, of the panel being able to dig deeper into some of those issues and maybe widening out. One of the things that many panel members have reflected on is how they're going back to their communities, having those conversations locally, wanting to support distributed dialogue around how data and AI are changing things. So I think linked to those pieces of skills and capacity, we were really struck when we read the AI the AI Summit's pre-engagement. It kind of talked about public fears about AI. And it said, let's have a communications campaign. And it's what we learned through the panel was communications doesn't work. Telling people what to think about AI or selling the positive message won't get us there. Having conversations that build capacity, that have that chance for experts, citizens to have equal conversation gets us to a much better place. And I think there's a real opportunity in the next year to spread that, kind of seizing the moment of doing that.
Love the connection to our theme. Thank you, Tim, for that. Gold star for you. And we've got a panel session coming up later this afternoon, which I know you're joining, to delve a bit deeper into this of how do we get that public engagement right and what does that look like. So more to come on that. Janet, Tim mentioned communities and you mentioned communities. So what would you like to see happen next? Is it that taking what you've learned and spreading it in your Cornwall community?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's so important, having discovered myself that I actually didn't really understand AI. So I would like somehow, which is why I was thinking, if we could have a hopes and fears lab replicated in every area, that can be the basis for a start of a conversation. I just feel it's so important that we talk and to spread the word to communities, mainly to reduce the fears. And we need to be more positive about society and what can happen, but we do need to work together to do that. And I feel very strongly that citizens should be part of that conversation. So if I just feel we should move out to the communities and spread the word, basically.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're going to be a great champion, Janet, for doing that. So thank you for picking up that baton. Sharif, what would you like to see happen next?
For me, I'm already a turned advocate of AI. I'm positive about it. I'm having conversations with not only friends and family and turning their heads, also on social media. I'm having lots of debates with people about it's awful. I'm going to lose my job. I'm telling them stuff that I've heard about and what I've experienced these 4 days. For me, I think it should be, like Janet says, something that we all learn in the community. It's nothing to be scared of. I think one thing that AI could positively impact right now, my personal view, which is a very negative situation and subject, is the NHS. So with NHS people, there's no funding, there's no appointments. And I saw something on the news only a few weeks ago that AI was introducing some sort of pilot scheme where there was appointments and looking at cancellations and time and freeing it up and making more appointments available. So that's a positive thing, and that's through AI. So people should be made aware of that. We're getting more appointments at your doctors because of AI. So it's a good thing. So for me, it's about presenting the positive word what AI is doing, not the negative. Because at the moment, so far so good. Touch wood, it's good.
And then to Janet's point, where there are those fears, those hopes and fear labs, being able to unpack them and understand
Absolutely brilliant. It gives people, everyday people who are doing the shopping, who are going for a bus, who are going to the doctors, an opportunity just to quickly nip in and say, oh, this AI, oh, I'm scared of it, oh, I don't like it. Sit down for 5 minutes, I'll have a chat with you. Oh, I didn't know that. Do you know something? Thank you for that. And they go away with a positive mindset. And when they have conversations with their neighbours and their friends, oh, I didn't know that, Janet. Oh, so it's about spreading the word.
And it's hearts and minds then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's that bit of confidence is one of the key things. So whether people come out feeling more optimistic or confirmed in kind of the pessimism or their challenges, we can have the confidence for public to voice opinions and to engage in the debates and engage in the debates constructively. Because I think actually when we talk about fears, I think often, whether it's policymakers or companies or others, we can be quite fearful of opening up that conversation with citizens about what they think of the technology. We're starting often with people from a position that are those ethical concerns. What are we going to open up if we start that conversation? And I think what we learned through this process was doing that in that deliberative way opens up a constructive conversation, not one that's about civil society or citizens being kind of knocking everything, throwing stones, kind of just that gets us deadlocked, which is the other fear about kind of engagement of we're just going to end up deadlocked. We need to move fast on regulation. Having this conversation is going to slow us down, that kind of fear. Actually, what we're finding is having that conversation opens up new avenues for thinking about this, helps policymakers, companies understand the concerns there can be met, the concerns there need deeper conversation, is significant. And I think more than anything, it's that getting into those conversations, not being scared of, not thinking we can't start the public engagement because we don't have enough expertise and so on, but going, we can have really meaningful conversation
or
about
people willing
data
to
and
take
AI.
part. Clearly, we have people willing to take part. Well, look, we've come to the end of our time, but I hope you'll agree that's fascinating to hear more about the People's Panel. And just well done, Tim, and all the team at Connected by Data for putting the panel together. Sharif, Janet, thank you so much for being part of it.
Sorry, can I just say one thing? If anyone is interested in our, well, not on the board here, but we've also got some leaflets if you want to take some. If you want to, have a look and a read, definitely help yourself. I'll be sitting in the front here to help yourself.
And we'll put some in the reception area as well. But Janet, Tim,
Thank you.
Sharif,
Thank you
thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your insights. Please, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.